By way of Staten Island, we was New York City fireman, had a heart attack. About a year after the heart attack, I was fully retired, looking to get out of New York City, was looking for a less stressful way of life. At the time, one of our sons was at Carson Long Military Academy in New Bloomfield, so we knew the area. We knew, it was a beautiful area to live in. The people out here are really nice. As ridiculous as it sounds, the retail people working in Pennsylvania compared to New York, people are actually helpful. And that was one of the culture shocks that we had moving out here.
Yeah.
People like, oh, a lot of culture shock. I'm like, helpful people in stores and helpful people in restaurants coming out of New York to Pennsylvania. That was one of the culture shocks. And being from Pennsylvania, when you go to New York and you try to get help, you're like, oh, this is what the guy was talking about.
So from visiting your sons, you knew you liked the area.
From visiting our sons, we knew we liked the area. Then we started our search for houses, and we knew we wanted to live within an hour and a half where our son's son at the time went to school. And that brought us through Cumberland County and Dauphin County, and then we ended up looking up here in Perry County and found a nice farmhouse in the middle of nowhere with 12 acres of farmland that we had no idea what to do with. So the first couple of years we rented it out, and then we started collecting goats.
And that was your idea.
That was my idea, yes. I thought goats would be fun, and they are, but they are a lot of work. Wonderful work, but they are absolutely a lot of work.
What inspired you to take this on as a passion project? Because, goats, it just seems kind of random.
Goats tend to be a bit overlooked. They're very popular as pets, but a lot of people don't understand once you get them, the hoofs need to be trimmed, they need to have good medical care and whatnot. So naturally I started with 4 goats that have some medical issues with them that I didn't know at the time. And that kind of inspired me to get more goats, more market goats, more rehome goats, more, we've got goats, we've had surgeries, must have had probably a dozen different surgeries on different goats. We're a New Bolton frequent flyer, as I like to say. But
You even have a goat that has prosthetic legs.
we do, we do. We took on 2 years ago. She was a 5-year-old doe that the farmer didn't want anymore. She was born in the middle of a polar vortex, and her legs suffered some severe frostbite. So she has no back legs below the knee, and her front legs are in a permanent contracted position. Unfortunately, the farmer just kind of let the legs rot off on their own with no medical intervention. But we have her now. We've had her November, be 2 years. She's an absolute joy. She's fantastic with her prosthetics, and much, much happier, much happier.
So if I had said to you 10, 15 years ago, I'm going to be sitting on your porch talking to you about your 30 goats.
Okay, if you had told me that 15 years ago, let me see, I would be debating between whether you were taking crack cocaine or methamphetamines, because you must be stoned if you think I'm going to be from New York City out into the middle of Perry County, Pennsylvania. Yeah, it was big transition. One of the jokes I make to people with the goats is they're unruly, they don't listen, they climb on everything, they eat everything, they make a mess, they break everything. So going from firefighting to goat wrangling was literally a lateral transition. There's really not much of a difference, and they don't listen, so it's really.
So you said you were looking for a less stressful environment. Did you find a less stressful environment?
Yes, but also no. The stress is different. Instead of people making a left turn on a red light because they're in a hurry, I have things where I'm trying to work and I put my hammer down and I go to pick it up and one of my goats is wandering off with it. So it's stressful because you need the hammer, but it's also hysterical because your goat's wandering off with your tool, and now the goat wants to play because he has your hammer and he's faster than you. So it can be stressful, but it's more of a fun.
Yeah.
Exasperated is.
So you have 30 though.
Right.
Did you ever think that your passion project of 4 goats would explode like this?
Over the last probably 2 years, we've basically doubled
Yeah.
the herd. We took a doe and her 2 sons, did not know she was pregnant, so that went from 3 goats to 5 goats. While I was trying to get her sons castrated, waiting for the appointment with the vet, they impregnated one of my other does, so that took me, that was triplets. So we bought 3 goats and got 8.
Got 8 out of it.
So we have a bunch of people have contacted us recently to take on their goats. We had one woman, she gave us 3 of her goats.
Oh, well, another one, we got a brother and sister.
Yeah.
And as I put the sister into the trailer, I turned around and looked like, how far along is she in her pregnancy? And everybody was surprised
Yeah.
because nobody knew she was pregnant.
So that's the one in the barn. That's the one with the little black baby doe. That's Azula.
So you thought it would be fun. You thought they were interesting.
Mhm.
You thought it would be a great hobby, but it's really turned into a passion, helping these
Oh,
goats that
absolutely.
Yeah.
really would have
Absolutely.
nowhere else to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we will take any of the goats on. It does not matter. We have people, one of the goats was being a bit destructive, so we took them on. We have everything set up. Lenny has done a phenomenal job setting up areas for them to play in so they're not bored.
For the grooming, I figured out where do they like one of her vets asked, how do you train the goats to brush themselves? I went to train goats. That's adorable. No, I figured out where the goats like to rub up against and put brushes in those positions.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about managing their coats because they just walk
And they
and brush themselves.
Yeah.
Is it her that has the soft heart, or is it both of you, or?
It's both of us.
Yeah.
Because every time another goat shows up or another phone call, I'm like, I don't want any more. Fine, where am I driving to pick this one up? You know, it is what usually happens. I was away at a conference last week, and I get a picture of this tiny little calico kitten, and so I'm looking at it with the guys that I'm with. I'm like, so apparently I have a new cat too. Like, how many is that? I'm like, 7.
7.
2 dogs, 2 dozen plus chickens, and 30 goats. So what's one more cat? It's
Wait, tell me what you have on the farm again.
So we have 30 chickens, 30 goats, 2 dogs, and 7 cats.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
And absolutely a partridge in a pear tree.
and hummingbirds too.
This must be a full-time job, taking care of this farm.
Thankfully, he's retired. I work.
That's adorable. That's funny.
I
But
work.
you're really not. You have jobs in addition to
yeah,
running the
yeah.
farm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm retired, but I also train the juniors at Ickesburg Fire Department. I'm the local emergency management coordinator for Tuscarora Township, and once I teach down at Hack with the fire school or the public safety center. Once COVID lifts, I'll go back to teaching. Right now, for my health, I don't teach because waiting for everything to kind of die down a little bit,
Yeah.
and I have enough to keep me busy.
How about you?
I work for an auto parts manufacturing company. Yeah, but I work remotely, and I go in once or twice a week.
So you retired in 2000. Right, I was going to say you need
Yeah.
air quotes when you talk
In
about
Yeah.
11, yeah.
That's most firemen. Actually, most civil cops as well. It's like you retire and then it's just like, well, this was nice for a week. Now I need to find 60, you know, when you used to working 48, 60 hours a week, you can't go from 60 hours a week to 0 hours a week. It's just, I'm sure there's guys out there that can. I just haven't met any of them. Everybody I know gets a part-time job, 2 part-time jobs, a hobby doing something, starting a business. Sitting still is just not really what you're good at.
How much did the events of 9/11 20 years ago play into your decision to move here?
I'd say more than 100% if it was math, but if mathematically possible, it was, I wanted to get out of New York City and as far away from city life as we could, Not that I was expecting another terrorist attack. It's just when things go wrong, I don't want to be in a city anymore. I've been through enough emergencies in a city to know that's not where I want to be forever. As it's the world. Emergencies will continue to happen. There will always be another major catastrophe right around the corner, and I would rather be up here. Oh my God, I sound like a survivalist when I'm saying that. But really, I just wanted to get out of the city, and less stress is really what it came down to.
I think it's also a reminder, like you should go to the firehouse.
Yeah.
What do? Do you go to the firehouse all the time? Do you have breakfast with the guys? How often do you hang out with the guys? They start talking about fires, they start talking about this, start talking about that. It's a hard reminder,
Yeah.
very hard reminder.
Can you tell me about your experience on that day?
My day started off bad to begin with. We were going for one of our daughters has a brain deformity, so we're going to get an MRI at Long Island College Hospital. We're actually in the waiting room waiting for the MRI when the first plane hit, and we're in the kids' room watching Barney, and somebody comes in from the other waiting room. It's like a plane hit the World Trade Center, and I go in there and look, and there's this massive hole in the size of the World Trade Center, and nobody knew what was going on. And one reporter's like, "We're not sure if it was a small commuter plane," and I'm like, "The building's 200 feet on its side. That was a small commuter plane. It would be a very small hole." So we knew it was a jetliner. And then the moment the second jetliner showed up on TV, you knew it was a terrorist attack, because SOP for a terrorist is you have an attack, then you have a secondary attack to wound as many first responders as possible to cause more chaos into the mix. So went from there, went and got to put Michelle and Rachel in the car, went over to a local firehouse that's on one side of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, met up with a bunch of guys, and we were going to walk through the tunnel, Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, which leads from Brooklyn right to the south end of Manhattan. As we're getting ready to go through it, the second tower fell, and the debris and dust and everything else came barreling out of the tunnel. So we ended up changing plans and going to the command center. From the command center, by the time I got down to lower Manhattan, it was 11 o'clock or so, both towers 1 and 2 had fallen. 7 was on fire, building 7 was on fire, building 5 was on fire. I can't recall which other ones were still going on. The initial command post had been completely wiped out. All the senior staff, all of the staff chiefs that were the top guys in the department, the vast majority of them were killed. So they had another command post set up down the road a little bit from City Hall, further away from the emergency scene. That's where you went for your commands, and then nobody was allowed near the piles until Building 7 came down, because they didn't want anybody else getting caught in another collapse. Because Building 1 came down, people rushed in to rescue as many people as they could. Building 2 came down and killed a bunch more guys. So the chiefs were like, "Everybody pull back. That's let the building burn. There's nothing, not losing any more guys, to this today."
That had to be a helpless feeling, the enormity of
Oh, just sitting there doing nothing. It is the exact opposite of what you're trained to do. It's like, firemen, you're trained to do something. If it happens to be the wrong thing, you'll fix it later, but do something. Just keep it going. Try to solve the problem. In hindsight, it's easy to say you did this wrong, but when you're in the moment and everything's going on, you don't know all of the factors. You have this small, insular view of what you can see and what you can observe, especially when your command staff is gone. So guys are doing what they can try to do, and then later on you review what you did and go, how can we change it for next time?
So 7 comes down then.
When Building 7 came down, it was kind of eerie because it came down, nobody said anything. All the firemen that were sitting around, hundreds and hundreds of guys, all just stood up at the same time and started walking towards the pile, because that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for Building 7 to come down, and once it hit the ground, everybody's like, "Okay, 7's down." Everybody stood up and started walking towards the pile to start looking for survivors. Personally, no. No, it was a mess. Most of the recovery effort was done with 5-gallon buckets. It was just bits and pieces of people, bits and pieces of machinery. You had 3 buckets. One was for plane parts, one was for general debris, and one was for what we believed was people. And those were the 3 buckets you filled up. And if you see the pictures where they had hundreds of guys online, you worked the bucket brigade till you got down there, you dug for 30 minutes to an hour, and then that was it. That was your shift, and then you took a break and then back on the line again.
And how many hours a day were you at ground zero, and for how long?
FDNY went to 24 hours on, 24 hours off for I'm not sure how many weeks. The time just kind of, you lose track of your time when you're going through it. And you'd spend 12 hours down at the pit, which is what we called World Trade Center because the gigantic hole in the ground. So you'd spend 12 hours down at the pit, 12 hours at the firehouse, but by the time you're relieved and travel and everything else like that, you're doing close to 27, 30-hour days. So by the time you get home, pass out for a couple hours, and get up and get ready to go to work again the next day.
Or go to a funeral?
Those came later.
That came later.
That came later. These
Later, or?
months later. I think maybe February they really started doing with funerals and memorial services. The first one for the guy I know was Bobby King, was on Groundhog Day. That's the first one I can specifically remember. If there was another one before that, you know, everything, your memory gets tricky. At one point, we're writing our badge numbers on our arms,
And Social Security
and
number.
and last
on the
four
other
your
arm.
social on your other arm, in case you fell down the pit or in case the rubble shifted and you got buried. It would make it easier to identify your body. Did not remember doing that until people showed me pictures of, like, you have your name written in, 2-inch letters going down your arm. Just no recollection of it whatsoever. So it really gets spotty on what you remember.
You were just on autopilot with all your training kicked in.
Yeah, we called it drone mode. You just went in, you're like worker ants. You went in, you did your work. You did what you were supposed to do, how you were supposed to do it, when you were supposed to do it. Not too much thinking involved for a lot of it. And then,
Did you know right away how many people you had known that had been lost that day?
I knew it was going to be a high number. Didn't know exactly how many. It was 10 out of my firehouse. All in, I knew about 75 guys that I had worked with that perished that day. Guys that were in my battalion, guys that I went to high school with. In New York City, they'll move you around to different firehouses during a tour in case there's low manpower somewhere. So you could spend a lot of time traveling back and forth to different houses. So you get to know all of these guys. That anybody within a 2-mile radius that's working there, you know them at least offhandedly, or what guys were officers where they'd pass through working with you. So yeah, knew a lot of people.
Were you a lifelong New Yorker up until that point?
Yeah. Yeah, that was. So from 68 to 2001, whatever that math comes out to.
Where were you during all of this?
Well, I was with him when our daughter was supposed to get the MRI, which was canceled. He put us in the minivan and took us 4 hours to get home, which should have been a 40-minute journey. They shut down the Verrazano Bridge because they were not sure if there's going to be a biological attack or something else happening. Then when they did let people go across it, you basically did 90 across it because you were not sure if there were bombs set up underneath it or whatnot. You just went. There were people walking, getting in cars with strangers just to give them a lift back to Staten Island. I had not heard from him initially the first 4 days.
Oh my God, that must have been terrifying.
It was very terrifying. It was very terrifying.
So, cell phones weren't working. Once the towers came down, I had one of the only cell phones that were working. So I spoke to her, I don't know, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, called my house. She wasn't even home yet. So I called the house to let them know I'm down at ground zero. The buildings are down. I'm still safe. And then once guys saw that I had a cell phone that worked, it was like, okay, you got 2 minutes to tell your loved one that you're alive, then pass the phone to the next guy because I'm down to like 15% battery.
And you can't help but you were glued to the TV, which was good and bad. You just were glued to the TV. and just trying to, we had 4 small children at that point. Our oldest daughter was 6, our youngest son was 1, and just trying to make it normal for them was very hard. Everything had changed. You started hearing what you used to hear, a lot of airplanes going overhead. You had, fighter jets flying over New York. You'd look up and they'd be whizzing by, and you're like, what is going on? Where am I now? That was hard, but I think once he started going to the funerals, that was hard. Yeah. He'd go to 2 to 3 in a day. They'd move them from one funeral that, like, as the honor guard, and they'd move them to another. They'd go to another funeral. Okay, we're done here. Now we have to go to another funeral. Then you have the memorial services. Then you have, I think that was harder than that day. I really do.
You were on the honor guard for this?
So many funerals, the official honor guard unit was overcome. So it's basically at the beginning of the funeral, like early on, they'd grab the first 5 or 6 guys that showed up and go, congratulations, you're the honor guard, get over here. And the guys were good. Again, coming into the training and everything is to make sure the American flag was held higher than the other flags. Instead of making sure people angled or everything, they'd line you up and find out who the tallest guy was. Okay, tallest guy gets the American flag. How come? Because he's the tallest, that way the flag is higher. Then other people get the New York State flag and the fire department flag. And you get a 5-minute crash course on how to be the honor guard. So the marching was kept to a minimum. They train you to march in the academy, but that's really the end of your marching afterwards. After the first dozen funerals, dozen times being an honor guard, you know, and it got to the point after a couple of funerals, the guys would show up and like, all right, I need a couple of guys for honor guard, and you usually have guys who go, I'll do it. But
you stayed on the job for 9 years.
Almost 10. I retired September 12th, 2011. I was out on medical leave, administrative leave, because I had suffered a heart attack. So I was on an administrative assignment at the time. I could have retired over the summer, went to the pension unit, and the guy that was running the pension unit he goes, well, a lot of guys are waiting. You can retire in August, but a lot of guys wait until September 12th. That way they have the 10-year anniversary under their belt. And I looked at him like, all right, hand me that box of tissues and put me on the September 12th file. I said, for my retirement date. So I had 10 years and 1 day.
Is it rare that you stayed on the job for another decade?
By the time...
I mean, I would think a lot of guys, that would be it. That would be all they could take.
I can't think of anybody that retired other than medical reasons that went, nope, I'm done, I'm out of here. I can't recall anybody that just up and quit. It was quite the opposite. Guys were fighting to get on the job. The number of people looking to take the fire department test afterwards skyrocketed. By the time I retired, 75% of the job, by the time I retired 10 years later, only 25% of the job was still on from 9/11, because so many guys were getting out on either they hit their 20-year mark or they had medical issues.
Yeah.
A lot of medical issues. Right from the beginning, guys were instantly having problems with their lungs from breathing in all the chemicals and the breathing in glass, for God's sake. So a lot of guys got out really quick, But no, I stayed on, and you go on to the fire department. I can't remember the commissioner, but he had a great line. He goes, "The one brave thing a fireman does is when he takes his oath. Everything after that is another day on the job." And that's how most of us looked at it. It was like, it's like, oh, you're brave. This is our job. This is what we do. We have very low self-preservation instinct, a lot of us. Enough that you can get in there, do what you need to do, and get back out again.
So your training kept you going, and your desire to help kept you on the job another 10 years. Do you feel like now that once you came here, you were finally step back and maybe take some time for yourself and your mental health and
There was about 5 years where I could not go into a firehouse. It just hurt too much mentally.
after you got here?
Yeah, even in New York, from the time I retired to the time I left Staten Island, I barely went back to my old firehouses because people are like, oh, everybody's welcoming, but normally you'd go in there, you'd have your breakfast, you'd clean the house, and you'd get to work. Now it's you going in there, you're having breakfast, and you're leaving. So you feel like a guest in your own house. It's just, even though everybody's welcoming and everybody's glad, I've gone back to a house I worked in Manhattan. I haven't worked there since 2005, 2006. When I go back for my annual medical, I'll stop in and say hi because I know some of the guys there, and everybody's still welcoming. It's like, yeah, come on in. I moved out here, started trying to get involved with the firehouse, and just couldn't do it at the time. So it probably took about 5 years. Then one day I'm just, let's see, right around 6 or 7 years after I'm out here, I'm like, what do I want to do to keep myself busy other than farming stuff? I can't be a firefighter, but I can teach people how to be a firefighter. Went for my fire science degree and then started getting the classes through the state, become a fire instructor.
Is it hard, this anniversary that's coming up? I mean, it's a big one. It's 20 years. Is it more difficult than any other day?
Anytime we're getting toward a 9/11 anniversary, it's hard. It's very hard. You can't help but remember, it changed our lives, it changed my children's lives. But you kind of sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, this was 20 years ago. That's more of the number of how long ago it was. Doesn't make it any less painful, just like, wow, it's 20 years.
Is it harder for you around this time?
This time, regardless of anniversary, it's always this time of year. People are like, oh, it's 20th anniversary. I'm like, the 19th wasn't easy, the 18th wasn't easy, the 35th won't be easy. It's this time of year. It's hard for me. It's hard for anybody that lives with me. It's a bad time of the year for me.
Have you found some of the peace that you were looking for?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Being out here, having the goats, definitely, we have found a lot of peace. A lot of peace. It's beautiful out here. We love
And
being out here.
the people out here too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
Wonderful people.
Great people out here.
Wonderful people.
You need something, especially with social media. It's like I'll post something on Facebook. Hey, does anybody have one of these, or does somebody know this? Or you send messages out, and I've had building questions, and it's like, hey, I know a guy that knows that. I could send him a quick text, and I get a text back. It's like, yeah, give me a call. That's a long answer, and it's nice. Like if something I don't know, I know a lot of the people that will know it, and the people that are more than willing to help you with everything. I'll post a lot of pictures around here on Facebook, and one of my neighbors down the block that I've known for years is like, "Wow, you're fitting in really well for a city slicker."
Is that what they call you here?
Well, when he's teasing me, yeah. That feller from New York City.
But you really feel like this was the best move?
Yeah.
This was absolutely the best move. Absolutely the best move.
No way I could have done the last 10 years
No.
on Staten Island.
No.
Not for me. It's city life is great, but you hit a certain age and you're like, no, I'm done. I got to get up in the morning. This is not the life for me anymore.
Anything you wanted to ask? Anything?
I had never heard about the writing of the name, and
Oh, he came home with that.
I never knew that.
He had no idea. One of the first times he came home that first week,
Yeah.
he went in. He came home. He took his coat off, and he had his badge number with his name, and then he had his social security, and it was written in Sharpie
Yeah.
on his
The
arms.
thick Sharpie.
The thick Sharpie.
I've watched God, hundreds of documents. I never heard that.
Were
That's
you
the
like,
first-
what is that?
I look at him like, and our daughter, right or wrong with me being gluing to the TV like the rest of America,
Sure.
our oldest daughter walked in and she goes, "Where's that?" I said, "Well, that's in Manhattan." She's looking at it. She goes, "Where's Dad?" I said, "Daddy's helping people. Is Daddy there?" I said, "Yeah, Daddy's there." She said, "I don't want him to be there."
Yeah.
That was the first time she realized he could actually die on his job, and she was 6. So I learned to monitor when I was watching it, but it was just, it was hard.
We had a lot of friends that were coming over, so it's like, like my friends, her friends. There was always somebody, not
To
just
try to
our
come
house.
over,
Anybody that had a firefighter. There's always family, friends to make sure that the people weren't alone. Not just the widows. We're talking active
Yeah.
members and everything.
Trying to take the kids to the park. There's no one at the park. No one
Yeah.
at the park, because people were afraid to go outside. There was like rumors of biological attacks, rumors of this, rumors of that, and it was just
On
it was
9/11,
worse.
On 9/11, there were rumors of U-Haul or Ryder trucks loaded with explosives driving around the city that the police were trying to find because they were going to blow up bridges.
Yeah.
Somebody started the rumor and it just exploded. It was on the net, it was on the news. We have an unconfirmed rumors that there were, and I'm sitting there at the time like, that's the rumor you want to spread? Do we not have enough blood and tears and panic? This is what you want to say on TV that day? But they had no other news to report other
There's
than
nothing else.
it came down and the guys are still digging.
Yeah.
There was nothing going forward from that.
He was there up until after Thanksgiving. He was down at Ground Zero.
Oh, okay, so you
Months.
were there for
Months.
Months.
It
all of
was
September, all of October.
12. It was 12 hours on, 12 hours off for I think 3 weeks. That's about what sticks in my head.
Yeah.
Then it went for 24 hours on, 48 hours off, and that's the point where you actually got to be home for a day until.
Yeah.
So December or January, what memorials started.
I think it was January. I believe it was January.
February 2nd would be Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
that was Bobby King, and are you still recording?
Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the time, the mayor was Bloomberg, and he went to the groundhog ceremony instead of going to Bobby's funeral.
Oh yeah, Giuliani was.
No,
It was,
was-
Giuliani was out. Bloomberg was in.
Yeah.
Bloomberg was in.
Bloomberg was in and decided that.
Yeah, because that day, Giuliani was at that morning he was at an event for Bloomberg. I think he was kind of on the Bloomberg team.
No, not
No,
Giuliani.
no, not Giuliani.
No.
Giuliani was somewhere.
He was probably at a funeral.
Probably a
He
funeral.
was very pro cop,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
pro fire. Not so much with the raises, but at least with the attitude he owned.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the guy who was running against Giuliani.
That was Mike Bloomberg.
Bloomberg.
Yeah.
The little
No,
guy.
the other guy. There was another. No. Wasn't Giuliani out? I thought he was.
Giuliani's
He finished.
Giuliani was sworn out.
Yeah.
I can't remember the date, but that's in January.
Yeah.
That Giuliani's out, and because he was originally like, let me keep going for another month or two so the transition's more smooth.
Yeah.
And Bloomberg just looks at him and is like,
Nope. Out.
What am I thinking of? I thought there was. I remember seeing a
but this was
documentaries that was
so
about the mayor
it,
race.
Yeah.
it might
Oh,
not
yeah.
have. So King might not have been the first funeral, but it was Bloomberg's first funeral.
Yeah.
And he went to the Groundhog Day ceremony. So the New York Post, a couple of days later, because firemen are, if nothing else, ridiculously petty. We're problem solvers. We think the way other people don't. We have to, because when we show up, things have already gone terribly wrong. So some guys went out and they found stuffed animals, such as a stuffed groundhog. So when everybody lined up for the funeral, the back row, had 5 or 6 stuffed groundhogs. You'd have people, it's like the wives still had to work, so guys would take their kids, and the back row of guys in uniform right behind them would be another row of strollers and kids with coloring books, because you'd bring your kid to the funeral because there were so many funerals every day that you wanted to have a good representation. And there were times it's like you could walk to, there was 3 churches by me. One of them I could have walked to, but I still drove because I had the kids. But it's like you go to the funeral and it's like a couple of people would take the kids, gather them up, everybody would line up for the procession. We had a funeral in Great Kills. One was here, one was here. The 2 guys who were running the ceremony units realized they're going on at the same time. One's 9 o'clock and one's 10 o'clock. They grab all the 10 o'clock guys and tell them, walk down here. It's like 3 blocks. It's Catholic churches in New York City.
Yeah.
If you throw a rock, it's going to hit one and bounce and hit a second one. So they're going from the 9 o'clock funeral. They take all the 10 o'clock guys to double the number of people. We finish up at the 9 o'clock funeral with the family going in and everything. Everybody hustles down the block to the 10 o'clock funeral for that family to come in. Then you hustle back to the first funeral for the family to come out. Then you hustle back to the second funeral for the family to come out. Yeah. So you're going to 2 funerals, and this is not the only time it happened, where guys are going to 2 funerals at the same time, and you're in such drone mode, you're not thinking of it. But when you see one of the neighbors up there, hysterical crying, and you look at him like, what? She's like, just watching hundreds of guys walk back and forth between 2 funerals. Yeah. A New Jersey fireman was killed not long after 9/11, and one of the things the city does is you always send representatives out. So me and 2 other guys from 2 other people from a firehouse went there, parked, and were walking down the street in our Class A uniforms, and it was like the scene from the OK Corral, where everybody's just staring at you walking down the street, and like nobody's saying anything, and like, why is everybody staring at us? And we're learning to some Jersey guys. I'm like, everybody's staring at us like we're ghosts or something. What, something on a uniform? He says, no, we can't believe with the amount of funerals that you guys have. He goes, that New York would still send people out to other funerals. And we're sitting there confused, like, it's a brotherhood. That's what you do. You support each other. It's like, yeah, with everything you're going through, I'm like, we can spare 3 guys. We got 11,000. We can shoot 3 over the bridge. Can't reimburse you for the toll, but they can send 3 over the bridge.
Those tolls, man.
Yeah.
So what do you guys hope your future here holds for you? I mean, I know it's impossible to ever truly, I think, recover from something that traumatic.
Right.
But what do you hope for your future?
The days that 9/11 bother me coming up on the anniversary have greatly reduced. It used to be like in July, I would start hyperventilating. Like especially around the 10th anniversary, it was all over the news starting in July, and I'm sitting there like, is there nothing else going on in the world? And it's like every time you turn on the news, every time you open up a paper, it was just a constant reminder. So you end up becoming a hermit because you just don't want to see anything, because it's like it's already rattling around in your head enough. Don't need more. So more peace, yeah. Every year gets a little bit more peaceful.
The goats do help.
Every year we get more goats, so it's more distracting. Get my cardio workout, chasing them down, trying to get my tools back from them.
And this is where you plan to stay for
Yes.
quite a while.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
toe first. I'm not moving again. You're taking me out of your toes first.